snacks or bring them along, I suppose. Come up to the chairs up here. We're going to start with a look back at the year through LBTV News. We'll see some of the stories that have happened around campus this semester and last. And then we will have a presentation from our guest speaker, Matt Senior. He is a graphic designer at McKendree College. And we will also recognize our Sibley and Easton Award winners. So please come join me up front here in the chairs, and let's enjoy some news.
Diego.
All right, here we go. Enjoy the best of LBTV News.
Special edition of LBTV News. I'm Dylan Chisholm.
And I'm Michelle Baptist.
Throughout the semester, all of us at LBTV News have been producing weekly stories about activities on campus.
We thought it'd be a good time to reflect on our best stories thus far.
To kick off this Best Of show, Pablo Martinez had a story about the St. Louis Football Club, where he is also an intern.
Let's take a look at Pablo's story.
One of the biggest soccer clubs in the Midwest opened its doors for me, but this time it was not to talk about athletic achievements. For a couple of years, a few Lindenwood students have been carrying out the internship with St. Louis Football Club's merchandise department, so I want to ask more information to its key figures.
The reason we chose Lindenwood Belleville is David Vetter, our previous merchandise manager, had a relationship already through the school and the digital media club in the past. He did some work for us last year. He was very happy with the work, and previous interns that came through the department last year, did a great job for us, so it was a natural fit.
At first, I talked with this friend, and he told me to send an email to this person who was the person employed here who chose the interns. So I sent him an email, we did a Skype call, and then I came here to see how it works and how is the facility.
I also wanted to know more about the job itself.
We're just kind of getting the nuts and bolts under wraps and trying to get some of the procedural things in order, inventory-wise, shipping-wise, finding ways to ensure that we're utilizing our shipping properly.
And some new offers.
We are going to, this year, work on trying to get some special limited edition items throughout the season. We'll be running various scarves in different themes. First one we're running is the St. Patrick's Day scarf, the biggest point of the scarf being the change in our logo with putting the shamrock in the place of our fleur-de-lis. We'll be doing something similar for military, for Star Wars Night, for 4th of July, breast cancer, Pride Night, Heritage Night, and Christmas.
So, how can people purchase them?
So we've got the shop here itself that's open 6 days a week. And we have our website, shop stlouisfc.com. They can shop through. There's also avenues through social media, whether it be Facebook, Instagram, where they can click on links to get to our page as well.
Combining studies, sport, and work isn't easy.
When I come here, my day is pretty busy because I start at 9:30 in the morning and I finish probably like at 8 p.m. and I have no breaks. And the most difficult thing is going to eat.
But in the end,
I would recommend it because first of all, it's just a working experience that you will have not only in your resume, but also like you understand how things work outside the school.
First, for Europeans like we are, it's important to have a work experience in the US. And so I also love the sports field, so I figured it was an interesting opportunity to grow and to get to know how things work here and compare them how they work in Europe.
reporting for LBTV, this is Pablo Martinez.
Theater major Andrea Kostadinovic did a senior project acting in the show Danny and the Deep Blue Sea.
Drew Ryberg covered the production.
This weekend, Lindenwood Belleville's theater department is performing Danny and the Deep Blue Sea. So I went and interviewed the director and cast to see what it's about.
It is a play about these two people who are very broken, and they meet in a bar.
And their first meeting is not a particularly positive one. In fact, it's pretty rough and rugged.
They are all in some kind of trouble, and they meet, they just click together.
And what they find out through the course of an intimate moment is that perhaps maybe they are good for each other, and that maybe together they can make a whole person.
She doesn't know, not sure about her life, not sure she did something so bad in the past that is still with her. It's torturing her, and it's actually directing her choices, life choices.
He just wants friends, he wants a real family, he wants somebody that actually appreciates him and loves him for who he is.
I think they really represent people who are disenfranchised, individuals who are overlooked, people who don't feel they have a right to what most of us would consider normal things like love, relationship, children, job, and just fitting into the society in which they live.
The performances will be on March 1st and 2nd at 7:30 p.m. It is intended for a mature audience and will feature smoking.
I would say you should come and you should see this, and you should see that there is hope and a promise for everybody. I think you should also be aware of the fact that there is strong language and strong subject matter.
I think people who come watch it, they're gonna love it, absolutely.
I would like just to invite everybody, you will not lose time or waste time if you come to see the show. You will enjoy it. It's pretty dense, and I'm more than sure you're gonna have a nice impression about everything.
Reporting for LBTV News, this is Drew Rydberg.
Here at Lindenwood, our campus activity board does a lot of events to help get students involved.
Shania Viaba's best story covered their fleece blanket event.
This past Monday night at Lindenwood Belleville, Campus Activity Board held an organization called Cab Crafts. Students were allowed to make fleece blankets, all provided by Campus Activity Board. I asked a few students on how they felt about making their fleece blanket.
I saw paper and I like fleece blankets, so I decided to.
I had an English assignment due tonight at midnight, and I didn't want to do it, and I felt like making a fleece blanket was a better use of my time. So I decided to come out here with a couple of the other cheerleaders and really just get to know a couple of the kids on campus.
I also asked the students what they thought about the university trying to do so many events to keep the students active and involved.
To be honest, they are very good at it because a lot of last year we didn't have things to do, but every time there was an activity we did. And this year it's taken so there's more fun.
Well, there's a ton of events throughout the week. We get an email every Monday about it, and it varies from CrossFit to Zumba to making fleece blankets, and then also grocery bingo. A lot of fun things you can just do to get out of your dorm room.
We had 120 yards, and we used all of it, so I think that was an excellent turnout. We had 35 people come. There was extra people who would come by, but we didn't have any more fabric to give them, so we had to turn them away. So next time I hope that we can get more fabric to let more people do it and get involved on campus.
Reporting for LBTV News, this is Shania Villalba.
Another CAB event was the Make Your Mark event. Shay, isn't your hand on the wall?
Yes, and I was there to see how many other students are leaving their mark.
Students had the opportunity to permanently place a piece of themselves on Lindenwood's campus. The Make Your Mark hand wall event led by Campus Activity Board allowed students to place a quote next to their hand on the wall. So I asked, what quote they decided to place?
I put my hand and I write the same thing that I wrote down last semester. That is, I need to wash my hand now. And I put, I need to wash my hand now again. It's kind of a joke.
So my freshman year, I did a quote with my best friend here, and it said, "Distance gives us a reason to love harder." So the quote that we did this year, I did it again with her, but this year we did, "Soulmates aren't just lovers because we are still loving hard." So we did it together again, and hopefully we do it every year that they do the wall.
Seeing the chance, even I got in on the action. I'm Michelle Mathis reporting for LBTV News.
Hey Dylan, who won the World Series in 1954?
I believe it was the New York Yankees.
It was actually the New York Giants. You should practice your trivia skills.
Well, I went to the trivia night event to cover people that actually know their stuff.
On Tuesday night, the Campus Activity Board hosted their monthly trivia night for students to win some prizes and have fun answering some off-the-wall questions.
So trivia night is basically your regular trivia night. There's a bunch of rounds on different subjects and a bunch of questions about those subjects. And we allow the students to get in groups of up to 6 and answer those questions, and then the winner gets a prize. So there's gift cards for the winning team. Yeah, it's just a really fun event that we love putting on.
The Campus Activity Board members said that students love trivia night because it's a good chance for them to show off some of that random knowledge.
I think that students like this event in particular because we all have useless knowledge, and this is a chance to test that. And I mean, the Belleville Brits have won twice in a row, and they're here to maintain their title, and they are just ungodly at trivia, and so everybody else wants to beat them because they want to prove that they know more random stuff than they do.
So we won a Barnes and Noble card, and it's actually the third time we've won it. You know, we just keep coming back. We do train, they tried stitching us up this time, but we still won, so we'll take the win, yeah.
CAB also told us about some exciting upcoming events that they want students to get involved with.
We are going to be putting on the regular events, grocery bingo, open mic night, more trivia nights, midnight breakfast at the end of the semester, which is an awesome event. And we do have a couple of things in the works right now that you might want to keep your eyes peeled for that are going to be super fun, and we have some really great ideas for next fall as well.
Reporting for LBTV News, I'm Dylan Chisholm.
It's been fun taking a look back at our best shows from this semester.
Thank you for joining us for our Best of LBTV show. We'll see you guys next week.
I'm not sure I saw his name on there, but we definitely need to give a hand and a shout out to Chris Sabo, our station manager. He played a big role.
Come on, Chris.
And he's been here all day covering this with our crew back and forth across campus to cover these events. So thanks to all of you for putting that together for us every week over the past year. A couple other people who deserve a shout out and a round of applause are Stephen Rutledge and Bessie Flores. They are our Easton and Sibley Award winners this year, and that is given to an outstanding female senior and an outstanding male senior. Each of them had a cumulative GPA of 3.0 or greater. They're ready to graduate, and they were nominated by a faculty member who recognized their excellence and put their names forth, and they received the awards. So if Bessie and Stephen could stand for a round of applause, please. Thank you very much. I believe Bessie has a poem is it a poem? Yeah. Is it an interactive? You want to tell us about it? Okay.
You get your poem ready, buddy.
It's right here on the desktop.
Is it that same business? Oh, right. Thank you. Okay. Hi, everyone. This is actually a poem that I wrote for Professor Alexander's advanced creative writing class. I presented part of it already today. The idea behind this is, it's a cha-cha-cha. The idea behind it is that you write 20 slides, 20 stanzas, and each stanza reflects an image. It's a Japanese business presentation thing. And I debated a lot about how to do this, whether to only include a picture or the actual text. In this particular poem, form was very important to me, so I have included both text and image. So each stanza is meant to reflect one image. I'm going to read all of it. It's very sexual, so... Okay, so this is called Things That Sound or Look Like Other Things, of the cha-cha. Gumbrain. At 2 a.m., she leaves her door propped open with an Adidas tennis shoe for me. I stop by the water fountain for a drink. Sitting on the drain like a tumor, interrupting blood flow, dingy white gum blob, teeth marks like ventricles, food crumbs attached like neurons, spit coat like cerebrospinal fluid. I push the bottom with my pelvis and welcome a cold wetness. Paul is dead. If you listen carefully to the final seconds of Strawberry Fields, she says, you can hear John Lennon say, Paul is dead. Actually, Lennon says cranberry sauce, with the same number of syllables or the right vowels, but she says it so many times that all I can hear is Paul is dead, Paul is dead, Paul is dead. Boob light. Evening line casting shadow shapes in her shoulder blades. Turn on the lights, she says, go back to bed. With interlocked hands, interlaced legs, intermeshed mouth, we stare at the lamp, an upside-down dome with a heart center tip. It looks like a boob, she says. Exit, exito. In case of a tornado or shooting, I want the room closest to the exit sign. In case of a drunk blonde Friday, I want the room closest to her. ¿Qué haces, she texts? Mexito, that's what, Mexito. A perfect translation, I am excited. An honest one, I am aroused, horny. Coconut sex. You know how the eggplant emoji is a penis and the peach one is an ass? I want to spend 2 hours fighting her on why the coconut is a better vagina than the kitten one. I want to tell her about the hard outside shell and the sweet streams inside. Look closely. Even the thin, thirsty hairs are there. But really, I want to spend 2 hours breathing in her coconut oil moisturizer. For this one, I didn't include an image. I felt like nothing could capture it. Away and away. What a way with words you have, she says, thinking perhaps of me. On the balls of my feet, eyes shot, bit lips, whispering, fuck me, fuck me, fuck me. When it all goes away, you'll stay with me in a way, she says, thinking possibly of me. With my hand on my pants, soft, warm, begging, fuck me, fuck me, fuck me. Finger lips. She traced my hand on a blank piece of paper over and over, like we're first graders on Thanksgiving, moving it a fraction of an inch each time until going full circle. The result is a random shape that looks like lips with random lines that look like crevices and chapped lips, and all I can think of are her fingers in my mouth on the first night we met.
Tinder tending. The second time we talked, she tells me she's deleting it. Listen, I've heard them all. The I'm in it to make friends, the I forgot I even had it, and the I'm in it to see who else is. Baby, I don't really mind tending to your Tinder tendencies. Neither should you. The chip sex. Babe, did you just suck your teeth at me? My friend's Tinder boyfriend says from the driver's seat, eyeing us in a rearview mirror. It hits me that teeth sucking sounds a lot like fingers curved deep inside a coconut overflowing with sweet coconut water. I love how that sounds, she said once, her fingers submerged. Uncleached. I can tell you all the obvious ones. Back freckles that I want to map like constellation, brown eyes that when hit by the sun can be galaxies, breasts like mangoes, whatever. I am crushed by the weight of your eye roll. I can hear you groaning, moaning coming. Oh, God. Thank you.
Be sure to check out Stevie's short film as well, on display back there with our video highlights. If You Only Knew is the title. Stevie composed the music for it as well, so be sure to check it out. Now I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Matt Senior. He's the graphic designer at McKendree College, and he's also an adjunct instructor here in graphic design. When we were looking for a guest speaker for the showcase, I kept asking students, who should we get? Is there anybody we should bring in to talk? And Matt's name kept coming up again and again. And I saw the work that was coming out of Matt's classes. You can see some of it right here. And it seemed like a logical fit. And as soon as he gave me the title and a quick description of his speech for tonight, the backwards Santa Claus approach, he told me a little bit more about how it involves creativity and collaboration, and I'll save the rest for you. But I think without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you have the floor. All right, thanks, Matt.
All right, how do I, oh, I feel real dumb now because I don't know how to like actually make it like, also do I have to stand up here or is like, does this microphone work or is this just like a prop now?
Check.
Step into my classroom. Usually I can actually make this thing like big and, oh wait, is this it?
It opened in the browser.
For some. I had nightmares that this would actually happen. Literal nightmares. And now it's happening in real time. Okay, there we go. I can take it from here. All right. At least that's what I thought. Hi. So, I appear to have walked too far from the podium. And now the mic doesn't work. But you know what? That's okay, because I'm used to speaking without a microphone. To everybody in the back who I've never met before, I knew that there were people hanging out way in the back of Dixon Overflow, so I took the liberty of making sure that my name is at least somewhat legible. I felt if for some reason people weren't able to read my name, I think getting introduced as a graphic designer would have been a real big car wreck. Yeah, no microphone. I really do have to wing this. All right, so why the heck am I here? I'm here to talk to you about a bunch of different things. But first, for those of you who don't know me, let me introduce myself for a moment. as Justin mentioned, my name is Matt. I am a graphic design teacher here at Lindenwood. I'm super lucky to be able to be doing that. Not just because teaching is fun, but because consistently every time I've taught a class, I think I've probably learned more than the students who sat in the class. And that's in no small part to, Ron, you are always late. Welcome, my friend, I'm glad you could make it. That's due to, in no small measure, to the fact that every single semester I get handed a fresh batch of completely amazing people who actually teach me a lot of things along the way, not necessarily about graphic design, that's my job to teach, but they teach me more about something a little bit bigger than that. They actually kind of help me cultivate a certain amount of delight from the stuff that I do that isn't really available anywhere else. For anybody in this room as a teacher, which I think is at least 2 or 3 or 4 maybe, you know what I'm talking about. There's a reward system in place for reaching across the aisle and bringing a student along with you for the journey that you don't find anywhere else. And I've only been at this for about a year, but oh my God, I love it so much. So before I get this whole thing started, I just wanted to say thank you, Justin, for inviting me, and Derek for picking me up out of the streets like a wet, lonely kitten and bringing me in here and being like, there you go, go play. Thank you to you as well. So let's get this thing started. So when I was a kid, my dad asked me, he's like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? Because every parent asks you that. And I said, Dad, I know exactly what I'll be when I grow up. I want to be a stand-up comedian. And he said, that's a terrible idea. And I said, why do you say that, Dad? He said, because you're not very funny. Okay. I mean, I get that. That's probably true. But it wasn't ever about being funny. That's not why I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. The reason I wanted to be a stand-up comedian, it had nothing to do with the jokes, because I was too young to understand them. It had nothing to do with the props, because I really didn't understand those. And I didn't really particularly find those people funny either. The thing that I liked about stand-up comedy, because I was a child of the 90s, I grew up alongside Comedy Central, I liked it when they did the cutaway to the audience, where you got to see them laughing, you got to see them like detached from life for a little bit, and they're enjoying themselves. And the comedian is drawing from that, right? It's like a reciprocal action. That energy is contagious. And so as the comedian tells more jokes and they cut away to more people laughing, you can see he's not just telling jokes. He's cultivating delight, right? He's fostering this sense of whimsy. He's making those people happy. And in turn, they feel rewarded. The other thing that my dad told me about, growing up, is he told me, nobody's ever going to thank you for your job. If you do your job right, nobody's going to thank you. You're just supposed to do your job, and that's it. And I took that to heart too, maybe a little bit too much. But as I got older, I started to notice there's a system of checks and balances as you go forth in the world and you start to engage other human beings in this thing called work. Now, when you get to a person of my age that will remain undisclosed, you've taken a few different jobs, you've done a few different things, you've told a pretty significant story. And as you look back, you start to notice that certain things you did them because they paid you. And other things that you do them because they generate a certain amount of delight. It's the same as if you're investing in stocks. If you invest in something, you expect to have a reward pay you out. Some things are more risky. You might go out and try something you've never tried before, and you fail miserably at it, and you walk away and you're like, I'm never doing that again. And I've had my fair share of those. Failure is its own reward. But if I'm being honest with myself, I can actually look back and I can see there was a pattern. There was a certain amount of joy that I could cultivate from every single job, at least in a certain measure. But what was the common denominator? Where was the joy coming from is what I wanted to know. And as it turns out, the joy, that sense of delight, it came from actively collaborating. Anytime I got to sit face to face, shoulder to shoulder, if I got to exchange with somebody ideas, if I got to create something from nothing, and not just by myself, if somebody else was along for the ride and I got to give a high five and we both got excited about what we just did, that was the reward. It was never about the money. It's still about the money. But it's really not. At least not if you want to be happy. And not if you want to actually get something out of the relationship. So, oddly enough, these are also ended up being kind of chronological. Because as I left each phase of my life, as I left each job for something bigger and better, I was always seeking something that paid out more in that sense of delight. So I'm right here now. Like, I don't have any shame in telling you, I'm kind of in my happy place right now. As he mentioned, I work full-time for McKendree University as their graphic designer in their marketing department. But like this superhero, I get to like open up the suit coat at night and I get to run out here and I get to teach graphic design and Illustrator and typography. There's some more work over there. That was like my crowning achievement, that class. Oh, so much delight was fostered from that. And it has nothing to do with the money. It's everything to do with everybody sitting here. Like there's a bunch of my students are here, and that's cool. That is, it's delightful, is what it is. But I wasn't just brought here to talk to you about, you know, my sad childhood. I'm not here to point to this fun little, you know, infographic about all the jobs I've had, including being in the military, being, you know, freelance. A little bit of joy there. No, I'm actually here to go completely off the cliff and talk to you about a little bit of a thought experiment. I'm hoping you guys kind of follow along with me because it's not very scientific, which is good because I'm not a scientist, I'm an artist. But much as with the other presentations, I should warn you, the views and opinions that are going to be expressed in the following slides are accompanied by graphic design. So there's that to look forward to. And also, does anybody here actually still believe in Santa Claus? All right, I'm sorry, guys. So this might actually be an offensive topic to you, or even if you just have a favorable view of Santa Claus, because what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of take Santa Claus and turn him on his ear. And now I know you're thinking to yourself, like, why is he going to talk to me about Santa Claus? I am a grown-ass adult. Fair point. But then, so am I, and I still love talking about things that are completely unorthodox. So here is a completely scientific term that I've cooked up. Reverse Santa Clausology. I know. It's something that I like to do. If you're a student of mine, you know this. I like deconstruction. I also like not having to yell at you. Thank you again. I didn't even bring up any water. So I like to deconstruct things, and here's why. Deconstruction is a methodology for creating something new from something old, right? It's like upscaling or upcycling, right? It's like an Etsy thing. Oh, you were like my hero tonight. Thank you so much. So when we deconstruct something, whether it's art, literature, music, we call that a remix, right? It's because we take the... I'm done with it. We take those pieces, we rearrange them, we find something that suits our needs, or we find aesthetically pleasing. And when we put those pieces back together, we might not have something that's original, but we have something that is authentic. And that's what I like to do. I like to break things into little pieces. I like to put them back together again. I like to see what I came up with. I like to see what kind of a Franken design I've created. In this case, it's going to be a little weird.
So, before we move on, we kind of have to figure out who Santa Claus is. And I know I have some people who believe him. And do I have anybody who doesn't know what Santa Claus is? Are there any, I've never heard of this before? Okay, thank God. I made the mistake in a graphic design class once of saying, all right, so in order to explain the entire semester's work, I'm going to talk about Cap'n Crunch. And I got 5 hands go up, and they're like, we don't have Cap'n Crunch in our country. And I'm like, my whole system was based on this. Failure. You can learn from failure. So, Santa Claus is an archetype, right? He's an icon. He's indicative of an idea based on generosity, of giving. We use him in order to basically act as a shorthand for a holiday called Christmas, where we all get together, our families, we give gifts and stuff like that. But Santa Claus has a lot of different rules that he has to live by in order to be the archetype that he is. There's a certain, I don't want to say magic behind Santa Claus, but there are rules he has to follow. And some of those rules, if we really look at them with a critical eye, we actually kind of find out that Santa Claus is kind of the worst in terms of being an active collaborator. If Santa Claus was your boss, I don't think you'd want to work for him for very long. If he was a coworker, you'd be like, do not go near my lunch. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to walk you through 10 different aspects of Santa Claus as an archetype. And we're going to see how we can maybe reverse those ideas and generate a new idea. Maybe it's something that you'll walk away with tonight and you're like, you know what, I remember that talk you gave about Santa Claus. That was some weird shit, but man, number 7, I took that right here. Maybe not. Maybe all 10 are just going to be like, nope. We'll see how we feel at the end of this. All right, this is new to me too. I just made this up. But I work best that way. Let's start with number 10, the naughty list, right? Santa Claus has his naughty list. Every year, if you're Santa Claus, you create this definitive list of children throughout the world who are either naughty or nice. Nice. Okay, good. See, now we're actively collaborating. That's what I like. Sure. Okay. So we also know he makes this list. He checks it twice. Yada yada yada. But let me put that on its ear real quick. Can we operate on a system of absolutes like that in real life? Is that healthy? I don't think so. If you're a Star Wars fan, they're like, well, these Sith deal in absolutes. If you're not a Star Wars fan, I'm sorry. I'm also a big nerd, and I do not apologize for it. But here's what we can do by kind of breaking that naughty list mythos and working, in reverse with our reverse Santa Clausology. We can resist bias, and we can foster inclusivity. If we're being inclusive, right? We're giving everybody a clean slate in our own eyes. We're approaching somebody without bias because they deserve that, right? Whether it's in the workplace, whether you're a teacher who knows that, you've got one of those problem students that other people, they've worked with in the past and you just know that they're going to be trouble. Or maybe you're one of those people that subscribe to the idea that, there really are naughty people out there, and you can't work with them. We've got problem clients. They're naughty, right? Because they're just going to give you revision after revision after revision, and it's not going to be worth what they're paying you monetarily. My challenge to you is to take your naughty list, tear that thing to pieces, give everybody that clean slate that they deserve prior to collaborating with them. I think if you do, if you just approach everything with the idea that there is no naughty list, there are no problem clients, there's no problem students, and there's certainly no problem professors, they're all awesome. Yeah, I thought I'd get a laugh out of that. See, I really am not funny. It's true. I think that you'll find that collaborating generates a more positive payout, and you're going to cultivate a little bit more delight from it than you might have. It might be a bad experience, but there's still something you can take from that, right? Let's move on to number 10, or number 9. That's why I do art, I can't count. Cookies and milk. And you're like, oh my God, cookies and milk. There's nothing bad about cookies and milk. Everybody loves cookies and milk. It's true. I love cookies and milk too. But if you're Santa Claus, and you're going to hear me say that a lot, for that I do apologize, cookies and milk takes on a little bit of a different persona. Cookies and milk is something you do at every single house, right? You show up, you drop some gifts, cookies and milk, you're on your way, right? And people expect that. They call it a tradition, but really, it's kind of rote, right? You're just used to it at that point. There's really no decorum in it anymore. The cookies and milk are just part of the routine. And let me tell you, when you start to get into a routine, that is where the creativity just kind of dries up and disappears. And if you try to approach a collaborative situation, once again, with a student, with a client, and everything's by rote, everything's just kind of going through the motions, not only are you not going to get a very good product for your client, you're not going to be able to teach very effectively, but also if you're anything like me and you're expecting to get some of that delight, right, to get that positive feedback, to actually love what you're doing, it's not going to happen. So my challenge for this portion of my reverse Santa Clausology is to crumble convention. It's a little bit of alliteration for you. I know there's some literary people here tonight, right? And stay curious. It's very easy to fall into the routine of not challenging yourself because you know how to do that one thing, right? And you can knock it out like that. You're not going to try anything new because I'm not going to waste the time doing it because I'm going on billable hours here. But if we don't stay curious, if we're not actively learning, if we do not remain professional learners, even after college, long into we've been into the game with tenure and we're facing retirement, you have to stay curious or you are going to get passed by. And I know that's why a lot of people try to kind of gatekeep to keep the really curious, like hungry young pups from like running past them. But honestly, if you just kind of stay in that mode of always learning and always challenging yourself, that's never going to be a problem. There are plenty of designers in New York, Chicago, Los Angeles. They're like in their 70s, right? They're the ones that, you know, they've got like the big crazy glasses and, you know, like the really nice posh suits and stuff like that. And they're like, oh yeah, that person's been designing for 50 years. He's a national treasure. It's because they're constantly challenging and crumbling convention. So that's my challenge for number 9. Number 8. I call this one Dear Santa. So if you are Santa Claus, maybe you get requests from children in the form of a letter where they say, Dear Santa Claus, I'd like a horse. Maybe the kid comes up to you and talks to you at a shopping mall and they're like, I want a horse. Or maybe, very slyly, a parent does the talking for them. They're like, hey, Santa, they want a horse. So as Santa Claus, you're like, oh, okay. We got this, buddy. They're getting a horse. Christmas morning rolls around, and they get one of those sad things. Like, they don't even know what to do with those anymore, right? It looks kind of like a horse, and it's got like some weird rolly bits on it. It doesn't go anywhere. I mean, you sure as hell can't feed it. It's not a horse. It's like a cruel simulacrum of a horse. But you did your job, because you're Santa Claus. So here's my challenge to you. If this is your brand of Santa Claus and you're used to hearing but not listening, that's to listen, engage, and understand actively, all right? Especially if you are an educator or a student, this is crucial. You have to understand actively. What does that mean? It sounds like some weird TED Talk stuff. I'm actually kind of hoping that that's what you think because it's what I'm going for. So to understand actively means that you are asking more questions. And when you think you've got all the answers, you ask some more questions. Even if you think you know everything. I'm constantly asking questions of students. I constantly ask questions of clients. I ask questions from little kids because sometimes they've got some of the best feedback. If we're actively engaging and we're taking that challenge And we are taking the stuff that we are given and we are deconstructing it and building something new from the information that we are given, and then bringing it back and be like, is this what we were talking about? Chances are you're not going to end up with the wrong horse. That's all I'm saying. Number 7, big old bag of gifts. This is a little bit of a departure. We're going to take a breather here for a second. I don't want you to think about clients, and I don't want you to think about your teacher. If you're a teacher, I don't want you to think about students. I don't want you to think about anything else right now. I want you to think about you right now. Because if you're Santa Claus, you spend like 365 days out of the year working your big velvet tush off, making presents, right? And then there's that one big night where you fly around, you're like, here's presents for everybody, check it out, I'm Santa Claus. And everybody's like, yay, Santa Claus, we're all technically asleep, but we're cheering in our dreams. And, I mean, go you. I mean, you are a star player, but guess what? What happens on December 26th? Santa Claus goes back to work. He has to start asking more questions about what kids want. You gotta start looking at next year, right? Projecting the numbers, feeding the reindeer, paying off the elves, whatever Santa Claus does. I don't know, I'm not actually Santa Claus. So my challenge for you is to break that convention. If you're one of the people like me, where you are just always on, and you are constantly working, you are going to burn yourself out, and I don't want to see that. I like everybody in this room, even the ones I don't know yet. I think you guys are all awesome, because you're here, right? That means you care. That means you're kind of like Santa Claus. Well, except for you, because now you're leaving. Okay, I see. It's fine, it's fine. She's just taking my advice right now. Self-care. That is what you're talking about. Boom! All right, so the gift that you deserve is self-care. If you don't know what self-care is, look it up. Do some Googling, because there's a bunch of different things you can do. Just treat yourself. You deserve it. Take some time to make sure that you are assessing your own mental health, your own emotional health, your spiritual health. And that could be anything from writing poetry, just going out and doing a little bit of retail therapy. It really doesn't matter where you find your self-care, but if you are constantly trying to be the Santa Claus and you are constantly at odds with reality, trying to make sure that you are constantly giving, while I applaud your efforts, and everybody else does too, you're not doing anybody any favors. Because eventually it's going to catch up with you, and then you're not going to be that person that cultivates delight anymore. You're only going to be reaping sorrow, which got real dark, and I'm sorry about that. But I think you know where I'm coming from, right? Yeah, recharge the batteries once in a while. You'll thank yourself. Number 6, it's kind of the antithesis of the big bag of gifts. This is the lump of coal. So I took a little bit of a lighthearted, treat yourself kind of moment, because this one is a little bit serious, right? If you are Santa Claus, and by this point I really hope you're not, because so far Santa Claus is kind of a hot mess. You operate off of this system of reward and punishment. Sure. You just flew around, spending an entire night giving gifts. You spent 364 days making those gifts and making sure that they are perfect so that everything is there. But maybe you didn't pay attention to that naughty list thing, and you've decided that some people just don't deserve your gifts, right? Maybe they deserve something of lesser quality because you have deemed it necessary, right? You've become this kind of arbiter in the situation. This is mostly for people who are in a position of power, right? And for this, I challenge you to try and remember that even though you might actually instill loyalty in the people that you're dealing with, whether it's a client, whether it's a person who reports to you, please remember, fear and trust are not the same. If you are actively collaborating and you are generating that sense of trust because you build that relationship the right way, you're going to get similar results to if you were the coal-dealing Santa Claus. but it's not going to be the same, right? It's going to be something much more productive. It's going to be something much more authentic. And it's going to be something that lasts. And if you're trying to actually cultivate delight out of any of these endeavors that we're talking about here, I think that you would all agree. If you put in the time and worked harder at actually fostering a relationship and building that trust in order to generate true loyalty, I think you'll find that you probably get a little bit more out of it than if you simply just terrorize somebody into doing it for fear of repercussion. I've given out coal before. I didn't like the results. We'll just leave it at that. Number 5, how about those elves? All right, so you guys all know who Santa Claus is, which means you probably also know that he has kind of an unstructured workforce that might even violate some labor laws. We've got elves. We've got elves everywhere. They're doing all this great work for us. But if you're Santa Claus, I want you to consider for a moment how problematic it is that your entire workforce is made of identical little pointy-eared men. I know, it sounds silly at first, until we actually stop and think about the implications that I'm kind of hinting at here without getting overtly political. Suffice to say, cultivate and champion diversity. Why? I mean, elves are efficient, right? They all do the job the exact same way. They all look like each other. They all talk like each other. That's a strong workforce, right? I disagree. If there's one thing that working at Lindenwood so far has taught me, it's the amazing benefits of diversity. I've met people from so many countries because we have this really awesome population of international students. And every semester I dick something up and somebody else says, no, actually, and I go, oh, I had no idea. Now granted, that kind of makes me a little bit of a goober, and that's okay. I'm completely fine with that. At least I think that's the thing you called me earlier. A what? A dingus. I'm a dingus. I own that, right? I'm proud of that. Because I might be going out on a limb, but if I had not fostered just a little bit of trust, then I don't think she would ever bother calling me that because it wouldn't be worth it. So here's the thing about cultivating and championing diversity. You are going to make a better relationship with the end product, with the end user. Everything is going to be more fulfilling the more that you foster diversity. And it might not be something that's paying out to you, but it sure as hell is going to pay off to the other people that you are reaching out across the aisle, grabbing their hand and saying, come on, bud, we're going for this journey together. It's going to matter to them. I'll tell you a small story about me in the Marine Corps. I was the only skinny white dude in my platoon. And one day, all of the Filipino kids who I had in my platoon, because I don't know how it happened, but it was me, and it was about 5 Filipino guys. One day they went on a limb, they're like, hey, Corporal Senior, do you want to come eat lunch with us? I was like, yeah, I do. Let's do this. I don't know if it was just a cruel joke, or if it was I don't really know why this happened. But it's one of the best experiences I've had in my life. They handed me an egg. I said, ooh, hard-boiled egg. I love hard-boiled eggs. And they're like, yeah, hard-boiled egg. All right, man. And then they handed me a bottle of hot sauce. I was like, all right, cool, hot sauce. I like hot sauce. So we started opening the egg, and inside the egg was a baby duck. It's apparently a delicacy called balut. And I said, what am I supposed to do with this? And they're like, you eat it, man. What's up? I was like, how? What am I supposed to do? It's literally a baby duck. There's like feathers and like feet. Like quack, quack. And so they started going to town. They put their hot sauce on the duck and they started eating it. So I said, F it. I started eating it. They're like, you ate that? I'm like, yeah. They're like, cool. And from that day forward, like, me and those guys were like that. Like, we did everything together. They never made me eat balut again because they could see I wasn't enjoying it, but the entire time I'm like, that's good. I think they valued my effort. But something else weird happened, is after that, like, other people from other ethnic groups started saying, oh, hey, I wonder if we can get them to eat our food. So I got brought to my first black wedding, and it was amazing. I'd never seen somebody jump over a broom before. I got tears in my eyes. It was just the most beautiful thing I ever saw. And then they brought out all kinds of weird stuff. I got collard greens for the first time. I didn't understand the appeal, but I ate it. I ate everything I was given. And honestly, if I had said no to any of that, if I had turned away that weird baby duck, I wouldn't have had a very rewarding experience. I wouldn't have cultivated any delight. And so that's just like my weird little aside. But I challenge you to just say yes to the weird baby duck egg. Okay, maybe not, but yeah, a proverbial baby duck egg. We'll leave it at that. Mrs. Claus. So if you are Santa Claus, everybody knows who you are. You're Santa Claus. You're on greeting cards. You got your own specials on television. People got songs about you. They're like, here comes Santa Claus. Yeah, because Santa Claus is the bomb, man. He brings you the gifts, right? You hear him up on the rooftop with his deer? Where's Mrs. Claus? Nobody knows. I think that's a crying shame. It's not really a very robust relationship if Santa Claus is the one that we all know and love and cherish, and then Mrs. Claus is like, I made the cookies. That's great. Way to be progressive, Santa. So not to kick him into the dirt too hard, but here is my challenge as far as reverse Santa Clausology is concerned. And this is something you will hear me preach endlessly in pretty much any one of my classes or at work or at home when I'm drunk and on the Twitters and I'm like angry at people. I'm kidding. Shoulder to shoulder, we are stronger. I believe that 100%. There's a lot of people I call gatekeepers out there, right? They're the guys that kind of look and sound like me. They don't want other people to get their job because they feel like they've earned it, nobody else has earned it, and go, oh God, those millennials, oh, what are they even? Nobody knows with their social medias and their cloud-based internets. If we go in one by one, it's called a bottleneck. The Marines taught me one thing, it's you don't go in one by one because you will be murdered one by one. We are weakest when we go in individually. But if every single person in this room stood up, got shoulder to shoulder, and started marching forward toward that big bright tomorrow to go get those jobs, we are stronger. You can't stop a wall of people. And it's real simple. You just do it. If you have the opportunity to raise somebody up and bring them along with you and have them standing on equal footing with you, regardless of gender, regardless of race, regardless of religion, it doesn't matter. We are all equal in this. And that's something I say to my students every time. I want to hold that door open for just 5 minutes and give people as much information as I can. Just give them those weapons. Let them get out there. Give them a fighting chance. After day one of every one of my classes, I don't say students anymore. I don't say, all right, students, how are we doing? Oh, we're good. We're doing good, Mr. Sean. No. I say, hi, designers. Because in my mind, the minute we start exchanging ideas, we start collaborating actively, we're peers. And that's how it has to be. I feel like I'm slowly losing my job. I'm hoping that's not the case. We're almost done. Number 3, because magic. It's a pretty simple explanation. If anybody tries to question your authority as Santa Claus, if you are Santa Claus, and you gotta be here somewhere. If somebody tries to ask, well, how do you make it around the world so quickly? Magic. Okay, all right, so how do you get all those toys done on time? Magic. How do you get down the chimney? Magic. Right? That's not transparency, right? That's smoke and mirrors, it's chicanery, right? It's obfuscation. It's a big word. And it's really easy for us, once we start getting comfortable in our role, to use this kind of shielding mechanism to kind of guard our notes and kind of make it to where nobody else can see what we're doing when asked certain questions. So I challenge you to be transparent. Be the dingus. Admit when you don't know something. It goes back to asking those questions, but you can totally tell somebody, I don't know, show me. There's really no harm in that, is there? I don't think so. But also that also kind of ties back into being honest, not just with, other people, but you can be transparent with yourself. You can tell yourself when you just don't know anymore and that you need to actually go out and learn more. I challenge you to do that. Number 2, ho ho ho, ho ho ho, ho. It's real easy if you're Santa Claus to just keep making noise, just fill up a room, right? Sometimes when we feel like we've got something to say, but we don't know what it is yet, somebody else is trying to explain, and you just jump in there, you're like, well, actually, in my opinion, if I was to be asked that, and, if I was to be honest about it, just start talking without having anything to actually say. Men do this a lot. You know what they call it?
Oh, who said it? Mansplaining.
She is absolutely right. I hate mansplainers. Oh, with a passion. You see it a lot in the game dev world, which is something I've been kind of dipping my toes in, working on a video game about talking cupcakes. I'm not making that up. It's common for people of authority to just, I want to talk over this person because you know what? I want people to notice that I know things. Look at me. It's posturing. Okay? And if you're Santa Claus, you probably like to do this a lot because people are just used to paying attention to you. You earned that, right? You're Santa Claus. My challenge to you, as the reversal, sometimes it's okay to just shut up. And this isn't for everybody in the room, but this is for people, this is something I have to remind myself sometimes. Just let somebody else have the floor. Let them be the magic person for a little bit, right? It's okay to just take a step back sometimes and let somebody else take the center of the stage and just shine. Because it's their turn. You've done this shit already. Sorry. I get really excited when I start talking and the language just gets worse and worse, which is why we're at number 2. That means we're almost done. But before we cap this thing off and I talk about shutting up and just keep endlessly talking, isn't that ironic? I'm going to go ahead and shut up, but not before I give you my last little bit of reverse Santa Clausology. Number 1, belief is empowerment. And when I say this, that means that Santa Claus, he only works when? Does anybody know? Santa Claus only exists if you believe in him. The minute you stop believing in Santa Claus, he disappears. That's kind of a terrible flaw to have if you're a magical flying embodiment of everything that is good and generous in the world, because your lifespan is just ticking away, right? So belief is kind of like, it's like Santa Claus's Achilles heel, right? It's his greatest strength, but also his greatest weakness. He's like Santa Claus, but fat and bearded. and a raging misogynist, according to my presentation. He's not really. I'm sorry, Santa. Please don't take my gifts back. But here's my reversal. This is my challenge to you before I finally shut up, like number 2 told me to, and I go away. And that's that I believe in you. I'm not making that up. I do. And there's a reason why I believe in you. Because I've seen the awesome things that this university is doing. I've seen the work on the walls. I've met the faculty members that are fostering awesome things from awesome students. And I believe that you guys are going to go out and change the world someday, if you haven't already. But what good is that? That's not really worth much. Most of you don't even know who I am. So, it's kind of up to you to be self-sufficient in this. My challenge, you can believe in yourself. And if you're able to do that, if you're able to keep believing in yourself and you're able to keep fostering delight because of the relationships that you build up and you don't lose sight of who you are, well, then you don't have to worry about a kid suddenly waking up one day and saying, oh, I'm sorry, Sarah Garcia doesn't exist anymore. No, because you believe in yourself. And that is the source of your power. So get out there, forget everything about Santa Claus. Start doing your own thing. Thank you once again for having me here. I think you guys are amazing.
Does anybody have any questions, advice?
Oh, no.
Any,
no, but, yeah. I think that is so typical. That is classic me. Yeah, I don't need it. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions at all? Thoughts on the creative process?
You have a question? This is always what happens in class. It's like I ramble on for 40 minutes and I'm like, all right, that is everything you need to know about print production. Is there any questions? And people are just like, nope, we know it all now. And I'm like, you're sure? You got this. And they're like, mm-hmm. Next week? What's that thing you said? RGB, CMY, what? I'm like, all right. You know what? We're doing it all over again. Everybody who was paying attention was, no! Oh, I don't want to learn about CMYK again. All right, what's your question?
This is about your games coming out.
Battle Cakes.
Yeah, Battle Cakes.
Yes, a bite-sized RPG full of magic and enchantment and talkie cupcakes.
So, is it in development, or do y'all have like a time when it's like?
It is so in development, man. It is. We are. Yeah, it's. Video games are they're kind of a perilous endeavor because you get this thing called scope creep when you work on pretty much any project that you're passionate about, because you start working on it and you're like, I got all these great ideas, and you start working on those ideas, and then right when you think you've got all those ideas like ready to ship, you say, but what if? And then the scope goes, and you're like, all right, but if we do all those things, then it's going to be even better. And inevitably, it just keeps stretching out. But we are capped off. We are due to have it content complete and ready to deliver to Sony in December. Yes, and I can finally. That's weird. What are you doing? Yeah. So Battle Cakes is it's kind of a passion project. It's a lot of me hand drawing a lot of things, because it was kind of a self-care kind of thing for me, because I was working for a sports marketing firm, and I was tired of angry guys with footballs all the time, so I'm like, I just want to draw something pretty for a little bit. God, if I could just have some like little pastel talking cupcakes and some rainbows and some other stuff, like that would be so nice. So we just started doing it just for fun. But then that thing happened where we just started meeting and talking and asking questions. We met a guy that does sound who's like legit kind of famous now. He's like doing like all these games, and like they're doing our soundtrack. I met Derek at a Pixel Pop festival in St. Louis, which if you've ever been to one, they're a lot of fun. Please go. But yeah, he wandered by our table and like we just started talking and asking questions, stuff like that. And that's when he's actually opened my eyes to the fact that I could go teach. That's cool. Now here I am, and God willing, I'm not going anywhere. But yeah, so that's my answer to that. If you got anything else, I will talk your ears off if you got anything else you want to know. It doesn't matter what about it. You could ask about graphic design. You could ask about my day. It was very wet. Yours was too, probably. Question?
Yes. What advice would you give to those of us who are designing games that we're ready to play or writing stories and we're comparing them to the games that are out there that we like and we're saying, God, I don't look like the work I want to be. My story doesn't sound like a bestseller. Do you step away from the work for a while? Do you just keep working harder at it? How do we get over that hump of not believing in ourselves?
This kind of goes back to that failure is the reward sometimes. If you stare at something for too long, it loses meaning. Do you know who said that? Andy Warhol. If you stare at something for too long, it loses meaning. And what that means, if you apply it to yourself, is that if you are so involved with something for such a long time, you're going to see every flaw. And before long, it's going to be something you don't recognize anymore, and you're not going to want to ship it. So if you've reached an impasse, and this doesn't necessarily even have anything to do with games. This could be any project that you're passionate about. If you get to a certain point where you reach that impasse, you're like, should I keep going? Should I finish it? What should I do? You need to ask yourself if you've reaped all the joy that you're going to get from it at that point. If it's just going to be a drudgery and you're just going to end up destroying the thing that you love, ship the damn thing. Share it with the world. Because at that point, you're going to get feedback, so you'll know what you did wrong. But chances are you might just get the opposite. You might get people who love what you did. And then you're going to step back and go, oh, man, I didn't think this was very good at all. It didn't look anything like the thing that I'm comparing it to. Comparing yourself to things that you love is a dangerous act. Because you're never going to live up to your hero's expectations, are you? I mean, I think Marvel movies have taught us anything. Yeah, I know, I really want to go see Endgame. But you're never going to live up to those expectations. Now, take that with a grain of salt, because maybe you are somebody that wants to put in the extra time, and you want to make sure that it's done exactly the right way. You want this to be your magnum opus. Don't let me stand in your way. Don't take me too literally. Then keep working on it. But just remember, it's all about what is that end product actually going to be? Do you really want a game that you have destroyed yourself over, or do you want something that you can just put out in the world and feel good about it? Only you can make that choice. Does anybody else have a question? I will answer it. It won't be, I can't guarantee it'll be good, but I'm kind of on a roll right now. If not, I'm just gonna run. Well, not really. My feet are tired.
So what if you could just like make up your own class? What would it be?
Oh.
Special topics, whatever you want to do.
If I could come up with if I could teach anything, I think what I would teach is how to analyze media with a critical eye. How can we be critical of the world around us? Applying things with the methodology of critique, I think, is something very, very important. Even though I don't necessarily teach art classes, I kind of work critique into our class. I want people to be curious. I want them to ask questions, and I want them to challenge each other, right? So if we were to take media, just any media that you might think of that you would be passionate about, and we could spend a whole semester just being critical of it, just breaking it into its little pieces, doing that deconstruction. I think that's where the learning really happens, because that would be something that we would all be doing together. And I think everybody is going to walk away from a situation like that. You don't have to wait for a class like this to come around. You can do this. You can do this today. You can do it now. Get a group of people together
and be critical of anything. Just ask the hard questions and analyze it. If you put 10 artists in a room and you put an elephant in the middle of all of them, you're going to end up with a whole bunch of different perspectives, right? Similarly, if you were to put a bunch of artists in a room and give them nothing to look at and just explain something to them, the most efficient horse ever made, he doesn't need water. He can run for miles. He's agile no matter what the terrain. Just he can go over hills and slopes, and you can ride him, and he barely eats anything. Granted, everybody's probably going to end up making a camel, not a horse. But no matter which angle of that analysis you approach it from, if it's in a collaborative environment, that is where I think you are going to seek the most reward. That's where the most delight is going to be cultivated. And so that is the class I would teach. Critical media theory. Yeah, it also doesn't sound very fun. It's not, I mean, unless I work a fun angle into it. I mean, I was able to do it with Santa Claus. Anything else? No other questions? Not even from, probably not for the people I don't know. They're probably just wondering when I'm going away. All right. Well then, if there is nothing else, not even from Diego, my star student, then I will officially take rule number 2 to heart. I will shut up. I'll get out of your hair. Thank you once again for hanging out with me.
Thanks to Matt, thanks to all you who came and checked out the show, thanks to all the artists, all our media professionals who've been on the radio and TV all day. Thanks again. It's been another great year. I hope your projects wrap up well over the next couple of weeks, and you have a great night.